In this course, you will learn the process of building your very own personal website using a powerful tech stack. You'll learn how to create a stunning front end with Next.js 13, manage content on the back end efficiently with Sanity.io, and leverage the benefits of TailwindCSS for styling and TypeScript for type safety. By the end of this comprehensive tutorial, you'll have a fully deployed, functional, personal website that you can proudly showcase and continue to build upon. Kapehe teaches this course. She is a Senior Developer Relations Specialist at Sanity.io. This course was made possible in part thanks to a grant from Sanity.
Aloha everyone, my name is Kapehe. You can call me Cap for short. So I'm super excited for today's tutorial. We are going to be building our very own personal websites. So we'll have a list of projects, a nice way for others to contact you, and more. So our personal website will be built with Next.js, Sanity.io, TailwindCSS, and TypeScript. So you will need a basic understanding of JavaScript, React, how to use the terminal, and a general coding knowledge. So what is Next.js? Next.js is a flexible React framework that gives you building blocks to create fast web applications. So you can check out their website. You can click on Start Learning to kind of get a basic understanding of it. We will be going over all the basic steps to get started as well. But we can also deploy on Vercel. And today we will be deploying on Vercel. So if you want to learn more about that on your own, you can definitely visit the website. Next, we will be having Sanity.io manage our content backend. It has a real-time data store supporting APIs for assets, user management, and the Sanity Studio. So we will be embedding our own Sanity Studio into our Next.js app, so it will all be very seamless. Now, to get started with Sanity.io, go to Sanity.io, click on Start Building, and you will need to create your own login. So definitely go ahead and go and do that. Now we will be using Sanity schemas today. So this is the docs page for the Sanity schemas. We'll be using a variety of these, and this will be able to let us set up our studios. So we'll be using image, string, URL. I highly recommend going into these schemas and learning more about what they can do for us and what things are required in our code for schemas. But we will be using a lot of schemas today. So definitely go and set up your own account. Now for everyone watching today, YouTubers do get a boosted free plan. Everything we'll be doing today with Sanity is going to be in that free plan, but to get that boosted free plan, visit sanity.io/YouTube. You're going to click on the Get Started button right here. Now what does this plan include? Here's the list of things that are doubled, 200,000 API requests plus more. So definitely head to sanity.io/YouTube to get your own boosted free plan with Sanity. What is Tailwind CSS? It is going to be the CSS framework that we will be using. It is a utility-first CSS framework filled with these various classes, and you'll see us typing these out throughout the tutorial. So definitely go ahead, get started if you'd like to learn more about it, but we will be going through all this installation together. And lastly, we will be using TypeScript. It's a programming language that builds on JavaScript that strongly uses types. It helps with things like errors and autocomplete. So if you aren't familiar with TypeScript, but you're familiar with JavaScript, it won't be too different in your eyes, but we will, again, walk through all this together. Now that we know what we need to get started and the different types of technologies that we will be using today, let me show you exactly what our finished project is going to look like. Okay, so here's what our finished project will look like. We'll have our NavBar, our header, and our list of projects that we map over. So we'll have our header and then maybe a little description that we have underneath about ourselves, what we do, maybe where we work. And then within projects, we will list our various projects. So for this one, I have only one listed, but once we add them, they'll just come into a grid. Each one is clickable and it takes us to a specific page for that project. Here's a little description explaining what the project is and maybe how you built it, why you built it. And then up here, if we click on View Project, it will take you directly to the project itself. And then you can view the project. People can click around. For this one, it's a YouTube video. Now this will take us back to the home page. Now these two are coming directly from Sanity, and we created a Pages section. So one of the pages we created was a contact page, and you can just have different information about yourself, an email, maybe a Twitter handle, but this will be our contact page. And then again, you can name these whatever you want. You can have any content you want on these. This is all coming from the Sanity Studio. And then the photo gallery, this is one I picked, and we could just have a bunch of wacky pictures that go here, and maybe we're a photographer. So yeah, this is what our final project will look like. And this is built with Next.js version 13 and Sanity.io, the v3 version of the studio. We will also be using TypeScript, and we will be using TailwindCSS for styling. And the really cool thing about this project is that because we will be using Sanity v3 Studio, we can drop it right into the next project, embed the entire thing. So this will all be in one GitHub repo, and it'll be really nice to maintain since everything's located together on one URL. Next up, we're going to start with our Next.js app. We're going to create it right now, and to do that, I'll jump over to my terminal, and I'm going to type in the command to create a brand new Next application. And that's going to be npx create-next-app. And we're going to make sure we put @latest. And once I hit enter there, we're going to see a nice walkthrough. So I'm going to say, yes, let's install this package. And we're going to name our project Next-Sanity. You can name it whatever you'd like. I probably shouldn't have named it Next-Sanity because it is the same name as the Sanity library we're about to use, but oh well. Would you like to use TypeScript? We are going to use TypeScript. It will help with a little bit of autocomplete, help us find errors, and generally really helpful to have in a project, so yes. Would we like to use ESLint? This will help us catch some errors, so click yes for ESLint. Would we like to use a source directory? This is kind of a personal preference. If you use the source directory, everything gets thrown into a source directory and everything will just live under there. So you'll have your app directory inside of that. For us, we're just going to stick with the default for no, so that our project will actually use the app directory. So the app directory is a Next 13 thing. So we'll click no here, and here we go. This is the fun one. Would you like to use experimental app directory, which is brand new? We are going to say yes. So press right, and you can click yes right here, and we're going to hit enter. And then what import alias would you like to configure? We're going to stick with the default here and just press enter. All right. So that is doing its thing. All right, so we have a brand new Next.js 13 application with the new app folder. So this is actually a great introduction to Next 13's app folder. So if you haven't used the app folder, this video will walk you through how to use it. A lot of different changes that are happening if you're coming over from the Pages folder, as you may already know in Next app. So at the recording of this video, the app folder is still in beta. That might change by the time you watch this, but just be sure to go check out the docs to see if the app folder is still in beta. All right, so we have our app inside of Next-Sanity. We're going to use cd to get into our app. Let's do npm run dev here just to get our project up and running, and it's going. And here we go. So we have compiled over at localhost 3000. We're going to get back to the browser and refresh. And there we go, Next.js 13. Look at that, brand new landing page. Super cool. I really like the styles here. And that's going to set us up for the rest of this tutorial. Okay, so now that we have our Next.js app up and running, we'll just leave this for a second so we can set up our content backend using Sanity. So we're going to go back to our terminal, and we'll open up a new terminal. We'll leave that one running. So let's go back because we don't want to create this within our next project. So here we're going to create our Sanity project to do that. Run the command npm create sanity @latest. And we want to make sure we do the @latest so we get the latest version of Sanity. And this will be using the v3 version of the studio, which is definitely what we want to use. Create new project, hit enter. Now, your project name, we can name this anything we want, but I'll just match it up with our next project, and we'll do Next-Sanity Studio. Again, you can name this anything you want. Hit enter, select organization to attach it to. I'm going to click none for this, so hit enter. Default dataset, do Y for yes, and hit enter. We definitely want to use a production dataset for this. So it's creating that for us. Does that path look correct? It does. We're going to hit enter. Now, there are different templates that we can choose from. Some have schemas with sample data. Some have just schemas, but we want to arrow down to the clean project with no predefined schemas and hit enter. We do want it to be just a blank slate for us. Do we want to use TypeScript? Yes, so Y and then enter. And package manager npm, so hit enter on that. And it is creating our Sanity Studio for us. So once this is done, it will live at localhost 3333. And we are creating this in a different folder, completely different from our next app. But we will soon be embedding this project into that next app, but we will do that in a second. So I'm going to cd into Next-Sanity Studio because that's what we named it. Hit enter, and we're just going to run it. So npm run dev to get the Sanity Studio running at localhost 3333. Let it do that for us, and it's going. Perfect. So now it's running locally at localhost 3333. We're going to open that up. We're going to log in. And we have our project up and running. Perfect. So I just want to pause here for a second and kind of talk about the Studio. So the Studio is a web app that is written in React. Right now we are running it locally on our computer where we can edit it and customize it. Currently, we are looking at the desk tool of the Studio. So the Studio is connected to a real-time hosted content lake. There is no local content, so what you do gets synced automatically to the said content lake. So we can deploy the Studio to the web once we think it's ready to use, and once we have our updates. We won't be deploying this separate from the next app because we are embedding it. So once it's deployed with our next app, we will have the online version to work with content. You can invite others and collaborate and all that good stuff. So at the end of this video, we will deploy our next app. And because it's embedded, that will automatically deploy the Sanity Studio as well. So let's go back to our terminal and let's actually open it up in VS Code. So I'm going to do the shortcut code space period. So here's our project. Let me get it back up and running, npm run dev. So now that it's still running at localhost 3333, I just want to point out a couple of things. This, again, is where you could do a lot of your schema building. We'll talk about schemas more in just a second. You can do your schema building. You could configure your entire Sanity project here. But again, we will be doing all of that in our next app folder. I just want to show you kind of what it looks like out of the box here. So the Sanity config file is a really important one for us to note. So this project ID is what we will be taking over to our next project, so that it knows what Sanity project to look at and which data set to pull from. So these two, the project ID and data set, are very important to note. So once you have your Sanity project up and running, definitely go to that Sanity config file and find out what your project ID and data set are. Those don't need to be kept private because none of you have access to this. So unless you have been granted access or invited through a Sanity managed dashboard, you can't actually get into it. So you don't really need to keep this private. Okay, so here's our schemas folder. In here, we could be listing out different schemas, but because we're going to be embedding, we will not do that here right now. But this is where we kind of tell our Studio what to look like, what fields to have. But I want to talk about the content lake. So all of this content lives in a cloud. We call this cloud the content lake. And all of this happens within data sets. So a data set is a collection of JSON documents that can be of different types and have references to each other. As we start adding schemas and inputting content, we will be able to see the raw JSON of our data. So we are going to actually go to our manage.sanity.io dashboard. And that studio we just made is this top one. So we're going to do Next Sanity Studio, click on that. And I just want to show this off for a quick second. So notice that project ID, that lives here. This is where I can invite project members, like I was saying earlier. So if I wanted one of you to collaborate with me on this project, I would click there, put in your email address, send the invite, and then whatever role I want you to have. I want to also point out API. So right now our data is only allowed to be viewed at localhost 3333. Once we start embedding this into our next app, we will need to add localhost 33 or localhost 3000. And once we deploy this, we will need to add our URL that we used in the deployed version. So we would do add course origin, put in that URL, allow credentials, and then save. So right now, we can actually add in localhost 3000, allow credentials, save that. So now when we embed this right away, our next app will be able to see the entire data set for this project and all data that goes with it. Now we have our project and our sanity files. So to query for our content, we are going to be using GROQ. When you use sanity, you can use either GROQ or GraphQL, but for this video, we are going to be using GROQ, and we'll look into what that is and how to use it and what kind of queries we'll grab, what particular data. But this Vision plugin is our playground kind of for this particular studio. So we can write our query in here, click fetch, and it will show us exactly what content we would get back with that query. So GROQ is Sanity's open source query language. It lets you query any collection of JSON documents and filter them down to exactly what you need by their properties and their value. It also lets you reshape and reform that data using projections and functions. We're going to be using GROQ to query for all of our data today, so you'll definitely have a handle on GROQ by the end of this video. So using the Vision plugin, it lets us query for our content for this specific data set in this studio. And that is getting our Sanity project up and running. So right now we have our content backend all ready. We don't want to stay in this VS Code and in this folder for any more of our Sanity project. We want to actually embed this entire Sanity project into our next app. So we'll do all the code over there. So the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to actually stop this server and make sure it's not running anymore. And we are going to move on to embedding our Sanity Studio into our next app. All right, this is the moment we've been waiting for. So we're finally going to get our Sanity Studio, which we have separate right now, and we're going to embed that right into our Next.js project. So currently we have two separate folders. We have Next Sanity, we have Next Sanity Studio, but we're going to get rid of this Next Sanity Studio and just drop it right into Next.js. And we're going to have one single repo for both Next.js and Sanity. So let's get started. We are currently in the VS Code project for Next Sanity Studio. So this is a Sanity Studios project. There was only one thing we need out of this project, and that's going to be right here in the sanity.config.ts. We need the project ID. So I'm going to copy that, and then we'll go over to the VS Code project for the Next.js app, and we'll only work in there for the rest of this video. So I'm going to go ahead and close this VS Code project. And here I have my terminal. I'm going to actually close this out. Let's cancel this. I'm going to open up this folder in code, and here we have the Next.js project in VS Code. And the one thing I'm going to do next is go into my terminal and then make sure I do npm run dev since we closed it out in the other terminal. And now that is running, I'm just going to go ahead and close the terminal there, and now we are ready to roll. Use Control tilde to open and close that. So first up, let's take a tour of the Next 13 in this new app folder. This might look a little different for some of you if you're coming from the Pages folder, and overall things are pretty close to the way they were, but there are a couple of different conventions that were changed as far as routing, file names, and where we're going to place things. So let's take a look at the home page for our next app. I'm going to actually close out this terminal here. We only need VS Code and the browser. I'll go over to my browser and let's go to the Next.js app, which is localhost 3000. This homepage right here is under app/page.tsx. And that's similar to how it was before with pages/index.tsx. But let's jump back over, and here in page.tsx, this is our homepage. Everything you just saw is all right here in our React.jsx. Now, I want to show you a little bit about the routing. Let's say I wanted to create an about page. Well, normally you would go into the pages folder, you'd go new file, and you'd go about.tsx. And that would be your route. But now you're going to have to do about is the folder name /page.tsx. So now you have a folder called about, and then page is the actual contents or the React component for that page. And you might be wondering, well, that's kind of interesting because now there's a little bit of more files that I have to create. The benefit here is you can do multiple files underneath this about page or this about folder, about route, whatever you want to call it. And it can apply to just this route. And what I mean by that is, let's say we have this page. Let's do a page right here. Let's do the about page, return about page, and I'll save that. And we'll go back over to this. Let's go to /about, and that's our about page. So this actually brings us a couple of benefits since we can nest our routes. So this is the about page, and then let's say we want to do a new file under here, which is actually, let's create a folder kapehe/page.tsx. So now, when we have a /kapehe, it's going to be our routing, but the benefit to this setup right here is that you'll notice under the app folder, there's a layout.tsx, which is actually the layout for our entire application. So I can create a layout also inside of about, layout.tsx, and that layout is going to nest inside of that layout and then apply to all of these child routes. So there's a lot of really cool things that you can do with this new folder structure, and nested routing and nested layouts are actually a lot easier in the new way of doing things. Now, this just scratches the surface of what you can do with routing, but overall what you need to know at this point is that a folder is going to correspond to the URL, and then page.tsx inside of that will be actually the component that is rendered for that route. And the same thing goes with the dynamic routes that were used before. And I'll show you how those work as well. For now, let's delete this about folder and let's get back into it. Okay, so what we'll be doing next is actually embedding the Sanity Studio right into a route that we'll define right inside of this app folder. So first things first, let's go ahead and install some things. I'm going to stop my terminal. Let's clear this out, and I'm going to say npm install sanity, which is the main sanity package that we're going to need, and next-sanity is the library that we will need. Not to be confused with the name of our project. I definitely should have named it the same thing. Oops, sorry everyone. But that's where a lot of the magic is going to come from. So all right, we have those packages installed. How do we start using them? We are going to, let's first start our dev server again. So let's close that out. Let's go to our sidebar, and what we're going to do right inside of the root of our project, we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call it sanity.config.ts. And this is where we're going to define all the things for our sanity project. And a lot of this is going to come from what we did before when we ran npm create sanity. Now, the way we're going to set this file up is we are going to define config from sanity, so import that. And then we are going to use that define config function to const config is equal to define config, and we're going to pass out an object, and then we're going to export default config. Next up, we are going to pass in a couple of things that are needed by sanity, like project ID. This is a thing we're going to copy over from that other project that we just created. We're going to have our data set, and that's going to be production. And this would be cool if you had multiple data sets that you created, and maybe one for development, one for production. We'll have title. Let's go for my personal website. The API version is going to be today's date, which is 2023-0-3-04. Cool. And when you create this, you can just go ahead and use the current date. I know some APIs are going to ask you to do a specific date, but if you just use the current date, Sanity will know what to use. Now, this is going to be an important one base path. This is going to be the URL for where we want our Sanity Studio to live. So if you have a website and you wanted to have people edit content at /admin, then we're going to do /admin right here. If you want to call anything you want, you can write that in right here, like /studio, and then you can create the route for it inside of our app folder. All right, so the next thing we need to do is plugins, and we're going to bring in a plugin called the Desk tool. That comes from Sanity. We're going to go up to the top here and import that. Import Desk tool from Sanity/desk. The Desk tool is a top-level view within the Sanity Studio. We need this plugin to view our studio at all, so definitely make sure you have this plugin. Next up, let's go ahead and embed the Sanity Studio right into Next.js. So I'm going to open up my sidebar, go into the app folder, and we want everything at /admin to go to our studio. So we'll be using a catch-all route so that anything you type in after /admin actually gets sent to one route. And the way we used to do that in the pages folder was with the little square brackets in our route file name. And here we're going to do the exact same thing. So we're going to say /admin, and this is where we're going to use the double brackets, ..index /page.tsx. And that's kind of like a wildcard. So it says all routes under admin are going to go to this page.tsx. Now we're going to use the next-sanity package here. And I highly encourage you to go to the next-sanity GitHub for it and actually look through the installation instructions and what you can do with this package. I'm going to just walk you through it, setting it up, but highly encourage you to always go read the docs. So let's close that back up, head on back to our VS Code, and we're going to say export default function admin page. And we're going to return, and check this out, we're going to say Next Studio, which is a component that comes from the Next-sanity package, and we're going to say config is equal to that config that we just created. And just like that, that's it. That's all it takes for us to drop in the Sanity Studio into a Next.js app with the config file. And the page.tsx for the admin route, and there's a couple more things we need to add after this, but this is really the gist of it. So let's do our imports real quick. Import Next Studio from next-sanity/studio. Let's go ahead and import our config. So you could do the import from ... Since there's a couple of folders up, I'm going to go down here to this config at the end of the word and type in Control Spacebar. And we'll just let VS Code do the import for us. It's going to click down, click enter, and notice how next is actually using the @ as an alias for the root of our project. So you can actually just do the @sanity config. Super awesome. All right, those are all looking good. Now there's one thing left we need to do that's actually a really specific thing to Next 13. Next 13 by default will actually render all of our pages under the app folder from the server. So everything gets rendered on the server, and as little as possible JavaScript is sent to our client. Compare this to the pages folder way of doing things, where a lot of that rendering would happen on the client side. Next 13 actually tries to move all of that over to the server side so that it's faster and we ship less JavaScript to the client. But since the Sanity Studio is going to be rendered on the client side of things, we actually have to say use client at the top of this file. And that's a way to signal to Next.js, hey, this component, don't try to render it on the server, render it in the browser on the client. All right, so let's go check this out. We're back on the home page. We're going to go to /admin right here, and this should load up the Sanity Studio right inside of Next.js. Let's see if it works. All right, so here we go. We have the Sanity Studio. It's doing the whole thing. It's asking for our login. Make sure you log in with the correct credentials that you've been using. I'll click Google and check it out. We have the Sanity Studio embedded right into /admin. And this is our Next.js app. All we had to do was npm run dev inside of our Next app, and we got the Next app running and the Sanity Studio running. So this is great. Everything lives at one URL, and it will be way more seamless for any users or clients or customers or whoever that are using our site to go to /admin, create content, they log in right there and start editing. Next up, we are going to actually get some stuff into the studio. We have no document types. We need to do that, and we are going to create document types and schemas. And we will show you how to do that, and this is looking great. All right, now we have our Sanity Studio dropped into our Next.js app, but this isn't real useful for us because we have no document types. So there's not really content for us to edit or create. The next step here is to add our content types. And as we spoke about earlier, we're going to have a project type so we can show off all of our cool projects we're building. And then after that, we're going to talk about the pages type. So to start us off, let's add a project type. I'm going to go back into my editor here, and let's close out our folders. All right, so where we define our schemas, I'm going to create a new folder called Sanity. And then inside of this, we're going to create a new folder called schemas. And then I'm going to do project-schema.tsx. And personally, I like to put that -schema at the end of it. You can leave it off if you'd like, but for me, it helps because soon you'll have a project type file, you'll have a project schema file, and you'll probably have a route for projects as well. So this helps kind of know where you're at. All right, let's start this off. So we're going to define our project as a project is equal to, I'm going to go ahead and define this object, which is going to define our Sanity schema. So we're going to say name is project. We're going to say title is projects. And the convention here is I like naming title as plural and name as singular. And this is what's going to show up in our studio, the title. So that's why it's capitalized also. And this is how we're going to query for each of our schema types. So I'm going to say type is document. So each one will have name, title, type. This is a document type, name, project. Next up, we're going to define the fields of this project. So I'm going to type in a fields array, and we're going to insert a bunch of objects, and each one is going to correspond to a field inside the schema. So the first one, let's do name is name, and we'll have name, title, type. And title is going to be what shows in the studio. So we're going to do capital name. And let's go for type is string. The next one, let's do name is slug. Title is slug. And then type is going to be, you might think this is going to be a string, but it's actually going to be a type slug. So Sanity has a built-in slug type, and we're going to say options, source is name. So it's actually going to define itself by grabbing the information from the name field. Pretty handy. And we can always customize this later, but by default, it's just going to grab what's in the name and slugify it so that we can use it. The next one is going to be image. So I will do name is image, name, title, type again. Title is going to be image with the capital because it's for the studio. Type is going to be image type. And Sanity has a bunch of these schema types built in. You can go check out the docs for which ones you need to use. The ones that we're using here are going to be the most common ones you'll use. So we'll keep going from here. Options. This is a cool feature that Sanity provides. We have hotspot is equal to true. And this means that in our studio, we can actually zoom in, pick a certain section of the image that will always show up. And I'll show you what that looks like. It's super fun. And then fields are object, for image is actually going to have its own fields array, and we're going to say name is alt. Always good to have an alt. Title alt. Oh, and this has to be an object. And the type is a string. So now we have an image field that has its own fields for alt. All right, we've got some left. Let's go for name is going to be URL. Title is going to be URL. Again, name, title, type. And this is going to be the URL that we point people to for a certain project that we have on our personal website. Type is going to be URL. All right, the next one and the final one right now is going to be the name is content. We need to actually talk about the project itself. So title is going to be content, type is going to be array. And this is going to be an interesting one because it's not going to be a string as you might think that this should be. So it's going to be an array type, so of type block. And this is Sanity's way to do rich text. We call it block content, and we are using what we call portable text. What you need to know is that basically if you do type block, then you're going to be able to do headings and bolds and all the good like WYSIWYG type stuff. You're going to get that right into your Sanity Studio. The last step in this is we need to export this object, export default, and I believe we called it project. All right, so we've created our project schema. Now let's go ahead and drop this into our Sanity config so we can show the schema type in our studio. I'll go into sanity.config.ts and underneath plugins, I'm going to say schema. And this will be an object. We're going to say types is going to be an array. And in this array, I'm going to do project right here. And notice this, we're getting this red squiggly. We'll have to import it to do that, do control spacebar, and we can import here from the Sanity schemas, project schema. And there we go. We get import at the top. Thank you, VS Code. All right, so let's go check out our studio. There it is, already reloaded thanks to Next, and here is the project. And there we go. We can just start writing in here, creating new projects. But I have one last thing I want to do before we close up this section. So I want to do a little bit of refactoring and organization here. Right now, we're importing our project here. And as we start getting more schemas, this is going to be a lot of stuff that we're importing. So I want to clean this up. Let's go make a barrel file and put all of these schemas into one file, one thing. So I'm going to write some wishful coding here. Let's say this would be schemas, and this array would come from import schemas from Sanity schemas. And that's ideally what we want to see here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that, and let's go make this barrel file that we just wrote out. So I'll go to Sanity, schemas, and then inside of this folder, we'll create a new index.ts. And this file, we're going to import project from project-schema, and we are going to say const schemas is equal to an array with project in it. And then we're going to export default schemas. And this is really just an organizational thing, so we have everything inside of this one file. So as we build out more schemas, we just import it here. And we don't have to adjust our config because it always comes from that index.ts file. So now all of our schemas are defined inside of the index.ts, and we just work in the schemas folder when we want to add new ones. All right, next up, let's go ahead and create some projects and then show those projects right on our homepage of our website. I'm going to go back into my Sanity Studio. Let's click this new button right here. And check this out. We have this whole studio just dropped into Next.js. I'm going to go ahead and in my name, I'm just going to put a test one here. Let's do test, and for slug, I'm going to click generate over here, and it actually pulls from the name like we told it to. Image and alt, I'll leave blank for now. URL, I'll leave blank for now. And for content, I'm going to say my first project. And we're going to go ahead and click publish down here. All right, so let's go ahead and create another one just so we have a couple to work with. I'll say second test, and we'll generate the slug. And then down here under content, I'll say, I'll click bold, second test. So my second test, and we'll go ahead and click publish here. So there's a little bit of bold in that. And now we have two documents for projects that we can go in and use inside of our application. So I'll go back to our VS Code. Let's close everything out, close all editors, let's close all of our folders, and let's start from here. So the way I want to do this is I want to go into the Sanity folder and I want to create a new file. We're going to call it sanity-utils.ts. And inside of this file, we're going to put all the functions that we're going to use to go grab data. For instance, let's do an export async function called getProjects. And this is where we're going to use our query language called GROQ to go ahead and grab those projects that we just created. So let's go ahead and write that in. I'm going to do one const client is equal to create client, and we're going to pass in a config here. And this is so that we can use the next-sanity package to create a client that can read from our content link. So we'll pass in an object here for our config. And our config is going to look like something similar to what we had in our sanity.config, but it's going to be just a little different. So this client that we're about to create is all it's going to do is read from our content. The config that we had in sanity.config was more to generate our Sanity Studio. So only a few things from here are necessary. Like we're not going to need plugins, we're not going to need schema, we're not going to need base path. So let's go ahead and grab all of these right here. I'll copy those and let's drop them into this right here. Now we're showing a red squiggly for create clients. We need to import create client, control spacebar, and we're going to add this from next-sanity. And you'll see the import at the top there. And it looks like the title is also not necessary, so let's go ahead and delete that. All right, now that we have our client created, we can go ahead and read data from our studio. Next up, we are going to take this client and we are going to do a fetch. So this is where we're going to write our GROQ query. If you haven't used GROQ before, just type along with me and I'll explain these as we go through. We're going to write out GROQ, and this is going to be the function that we're going to use to create our query. So let's go ahead and import this up here. I'm going to do GROQ, and that also comes from the next-sanity package. All right, so here let's create our GROQ query. So type along, I'll explain. We're going to start with an asterisk that grabs everything in our data set. And then here we're going to define, this is going to filter down what we want to query for and then open up a projection. And that's the curly brackets. And we will define exactly what we want to pull out of here. So first up, we want the type to equal project. So it's going to pull all of our projects. And it's going to say, hey, GROQ, grab those projects that we just created. And it's going to be looking for multiple projects. And we want to grab the ID out of it. We want to grab the created at. And then let's do all the things we had in there. We're going to have name. We're going to have slug. But slug is going to be a special case because we had a schema type of slug. This one was a string. This is a slug. We have to do like this, slug and slug.current. So we're naming slug.current to be just slug from now on. So we're like renaming it. So that is that. We have the ID, created at, name, slug is slug.current. Image is also a special case since the image type is going to give us the image.asset. So it's going to pull in the URL out of that. So the URL here is what we're going to display on our front end. So the image.asset and then reference down to the URL. And that is going to be named image. URL is a string as a URL schema type, so we can bring that out. We have content, and that is it. So we're going to grab all of that, and we're going to go grab all of our projects. And we haven't actually returned anything, so we're going to do a return right here, and that should be able to give us our data. so we can use it on the home page and show all of our projects there. And this was queried using GROQ. All right, so that looks good right there. Let's go ahead and use this on our home page. I'm going to go into app. Let's go into page.tsx. And this is our home page. Let's go ahead and just wipe this all out. So I'm going to do Command-Shift-P to open up my VS Code command palette. And I'm going to type outward. This is just a little trick you can do if you want. I'll press enter and it highlights everything inside of that. And I'll delete all of that. And we're going to write out my projects go here. So now we have the starting foundation for our home page. Let's go ahead and remove the styles and enter from our custom fonts there. We don't need all of that above there. And now this is our home page. So we're starting out pretty much from scratch. So let's go get those projects and show them here. The first step here is we are going to import get projects from, and I'm going to use that alias that Next.js set us up for at sanity/sanity-utils. The next thing we're going to do is changing up a little bit from next 12 to next 13. So what you would normally do if you wanted your data to be fetched on the server side and shown to your React component on a page, you would normally do this. You would do export function get static props. And then if you had a page that had multiple paths, like a dynamic route, you would also have to do export function get static paths. Now, in my experience, this has been a little bit harder to wrap my head around because you have to get static paths, which returns a very specific array of how Next.js does things. And once it's formatted, then it gets static props. It's going to return props, and that's going to be an array or something like that. And you would have to return props, which is going to be an object. And let's say you have projects in there, and that would be an array. So very specific way of doing things. But now in Next 13, you can get rid of all of these and check this out. We can just do get projects, const projects is equal to await get projects. So right inside the function itself, in our React component, we have projects. Await get projects, and we have to make sure this is an async function since we are using await. But look how much easier that is to manage, because now it kind of makes sense. We just get projects, and we are going to map over the projects here. Now the trick in Next 13, all of these pages under the app folder are by default server-side rendered. So since that's the case, all of this is happening on the server side, and then it's spitting out all the projects rendered right here. So I'm going to do this projects.map project, and then we'll do a div, and I'm going to do key is project.id. And then let's just go ahead and show out the project name. So project.name. And you'll see a TypeScript error here saying that the project is any. We're going to fix that when we create our types, but for now, let's just make sure we show these projects on our site. So I'll go back to the home page, which is just localhost 3000. And there we go. So we have tests and we have second tests. We are showing our projects that we had from Sanity in this video. Don't worry, we're going to make these styles a lot better looking than what it looks like right here. Remember the final project you saw earlier. But right now, let's just celebrate. We have our data and we're able to show it. And Next.js is rendering this on the server. So this is really, really cool stuff. If I go back to the studio, let's go ahead and create a new project. Let's call it, we'll stay with test. So third test. And we'll generate the slug here. Let's go down to content. I am the third test. And we'll click publish. Document was published. Let's go see if we see that on our website. Refresh, and there we go. So third test. As soon as we refresh the page, it shows up, and we were able to go get that new data and show it. All right, this is really cool stuff. You can start to see how the flow works from having our studio content, grabbing it, and showing it in the next app. And it's all embedded. It's all under one URL. All right, if we look at our page.tsx, notice this TypeScript error right here. If I hover it, project any parameter, project implicity has an any type. All right, let's give it a little bit more of a context so that VS Code can give us some IntelliSense, some TypeScript features like helping us give us what properties are inside of a project type. And this is going to help us out when we're working across our project because now we get smart IntelliSense and things are just going to be easier to find errors. All right, to do this, we're going to create a type for our project. So this is all TypeScript stuff. So let's start clearing things out. I'm going to close all of my files right here. Close this out. Sanity config. All right. So let's go ahead and create a new folder inside of here. I'm going to say new folder. I'm going to call it types. And then inside of here, I'm going to create a new file, project.ts. And inside of this, I'm going to export type project is equal to, and we're going to do everything that we have from our schema. We're going to say ID is a string, created at. And since it starts with an underscore, that's kind of saying that Sanity created this themselves. Remember, we didn't create this. That's not something we had to generate. It kind of automatically comes generated for us. That's awesome. That's going to be a date. And then the ones that we generate ourselves, we're going to define. Name is string, slug is string, image is going to come back as a string, URL is going to be a string. So we're giving them types. And now this one's going to be an interesting one. Content. You might think it's going to be a string, but the way that Sanity returns it, since we want rich text like bold, we want images inside of our content, we want links, block quotes, we want good stuff like that. It's not going to do it if we just say string. So we're actually going to use what is called portable text block, and it's going to be an array of portable text blocks. And that's how Sanity stores rich content. And it's a thing called portable text. So I'm going to import that. You can see a little green thing right here. I've been doing Control Spacebar to show the autocomplete, but I can also click this. Add import from Sanity. Nice. Thanks, VS Code. And there we go to the top. Imported from Sanity, and it's going to be enough to create our project type for TypeScript. All right. Now, how do we use this thing? If I go back to page.tsx, it still shows an error. There are a couple of different ways you could do it right here. You can say project, and then we have to import this project. I'll click on the little green light bulb, add import. So that's one way to do it. So now whenever we're typing and things are here, and I say project dot, it will show, check it out, ID, content, image, name, slug, URL, and it also tells me the type. So I'll do name right here. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is take this TypeScript type right here, remove it from there, and then do it right here and say project is going to be an array of objects, or an array of projects, sorry. Like that, and we get the same autocomplete. We see that this parameter is a project type, but personally, we will have to write a lot of code if we use this get projects in different files. So I don't like doing it right inside of each file where we call the get projects function. So let's go all the way to the source, Sanity utils, get projects right here. We're going to say the return is going to be a promise, and it's going to return project and an array of them. So now let's go over here. We'll do import from types project. And just like that, since we're doing it inside of our call where we say get projects now, anywhere that uses get projects, like in here, get projects, we hover and it's going to return a promise. That gives an array of projects. So now if we go over this, it knows, hey, this is an array of projects. And then down here, it also knows that this is a single project since we're mapping over them. So I think this is a great way to do it. You keep all of your types in Sanity utils, and then your main React components, they don't really show types, but they are typed, which is really nice. And we can delete this import now. So that's how we're going to add types to our projects and use it in our utility functions. Next up, let's start making our project look good. It doesn't look the greatest right now. If I go back to my browser, it's just this thing right here. Let's make this look a little bit better. So we're going to bring in Tailwind CSS. And Tailwind is a CSS framework that helps us build websites out really quickly. It's kind of taking the entire dev ecosystem by storm. So if you haven't used Tailwind, I'm going to walk you through how to style our website. And if you have used Tailwind, let's start building out this cool looking website. So here I am on Tailwind CSS homepage. I'm going to click Get Started, and under Framework Guides is where we want to go. And Next.js is going to be the first option. We're going to go ahead and just follow the instructions. They did a great job with these docs. Let's see, npx create next app. We already have our next app. And next is install Tailwind. This is where we are going to start. So we will copy all of this right here. I'll go back to my VS Code, open up my terminal using Control tilde, open up a new terminal, and let's do this right in here. So all right, that is step one. That's good. Let's go and create our Tailwind config file. Copy that. Back to VS Code. Paste that in. And we have a brand new tailwind.config and a brand new postcss.config. Down here, we are going to configure our template path so that Tailwind can actually look at our templates and only give us the CSS needed for the classes that we use. So it keeps our bundle size really, really small. And really the one we want to get here is the app folder one right here, since that's where our stuff is going to live. And maybe if you're using components, you can use that. Or if you want, you can just grab it all and throw it into your Tailwind config.js. All right, and I'm going to replace this entire content right here. There we go. And then I'll go back to the docs, add the Tailwind directives to your CSS. So we're going to take all of this and put this inside of globals.css. And I believe that's the last step until we can actually just start writing out Tailwind in our files. So let's go back. I'm going to open up globals.css under app, globals, and there's a bunch of stuff in here that Next.js has already put in. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it all and put in these 3 lines, and that's all we need to get our styles going. Another thing I noticed is page.module that came with default. Next, with Next, we don't need that, so let's delete that. All right, let's close everything here. Let's close our folder structure. So let's start from a good place and let's go into our terminal. I'm going to close that, and let's actually restart our dev server. So npm run dev. It's always a good idea whenever we build in new build tools like that. So now I'm going to open up, once this is done, I'm going to open up page.tsx, and let's write out some class names. So class name is equal to bg red 500, so background, not 50, 500. And back over here to our Next.js app, refresh, and there we go. We have Tailwind ready to go inside of our app, and now we can start styling out our homepage. So let's do this real quick. Let's delete that class name is equal to that. And the things I'm going to need here, I'm going to need a div. Let's do class name right here. Let's make sure we have a max width. So maybe with 5XL and MX auto, so that centers everything we're doing here. Then let's create a hero section. We're going to say an H1, and then I'm going to say, hello, I'm Kapehe. Close that H1. And next is going to use ESLint to tell us, hey, we want this to be an entity. So we'll do this with the a pause semicolon thing, and we'll replace that so we can make Next.js happy. Perfect. It's looking good. All right, so let's get some styles on our H1. So class name right here is equal to text 7XL and font extra bold. Let's take a look at that. Save it. There we go. That looks good. Let me zoom out a bit for now. All right, cool. So another thing we can do padding Y of maybe 20 and get some spacing on the top and bottom. And then a fun effect I want to do, I'm going to wrap this in a span. So I'll put a span right there. And then I'm going to say class name. Let's give this a gradient. This, I think, is a very fun effect. So BG gradient to right. So we have to give it 2 colors to start with and end with. So we're going to say from orange, 400 to purple, 600. And you can even do a middle color. So like we'll do via red, 500. Sweet. So let's take a look at that. All right, so it looks kind of interesting right now, but let's apply it to the text instead. So now with 2 more classes, we're going to say BG clip text, and we're going to say text transparent. Okay, all right. Okay, that looks really cool. So let's keep moving. Let's go and add a P tag underneath this H1. So P, I'm going to say aloha everyone. Check out my projects. You can say stuff like thanks for visiting my website, all that good stuff. And let's style this a little bit. So class name is equal to margin top 3, text extra large XL, and text gray at 600. We don't want it to be like super dark, so it kind of gives a little bit of a differentiation from the H1 above it. So let's take a look. Nice. That looks good. All right, let's go ahead and give these projects a little header to like say my projects. So right above the projects map, I'm going to say H2, my projects. And we'll give it a class name. I'm going to do a giant margin top of 24. We'll do font bold, text gray at 700, and text 3XL. And that will give us a nice little subheading for our projects. Let's take a look. Nice. So it looks really good right there. And now let's style out each of these projects. We have 3 of them. Let's separate them. So we'll go back here. I'm going to say class name here is equal to border gray at 500. Let's give this rounded, large. And what we're doing is we're adding a nice border onto it with these class names. I'll click save. And then let's style out our project name. I'm going to put div around this. And then we're going to say class name is equal to, we'll do font extra bold. Let's go for another BG gradient to right. Actually, we can simplify this. Yeah, let's just go and copy the one we have up here. Might as well just copy it. Scroll back down, and we'll just do that right here. And we'll save that. We also have the image for these projects. So let's go and say if project.image exists, then let's show an image. I'm going to use Next.js's image component here. We're going to say source is equal to project dot. And check it out. We have all of our properties thanks to TypeScript types. I'll say image. And let's go for an alt. Oh, and I just realized we didn't bring an alt from the studio. So you can go ahead and add that to your Sanity utils so that you can pull the alt for now. For now, I'm just going to use project.name. So let's keep moving. Let's go for a width of 250, a height of 100. And let's go class name. Let's say object cover so that it doesn't go over the width of the div that it's contained in. Let's go for a rounded, large, and let's give the image a border gray 500. And we need to import next image. So I'm going to go to the top myself and import image from next/image. And if you go down here, there we go, no errors. And that should be good enough to show our projects on our homepage and have some pretty good styles. So let's save that. Let's take a look. And there we go. And our projects are kind of just bunched together like this. So let's give it some spacing next. And I think we're reaching the end of this. We're almost close to being done with styling our homepage. So let's wrap projects.map. I'm going to shrink that and we'll give it a class name. So div around it. Class name, we'll do margin top of 5 to get some spacing away from this H2. Let's go for a grid. If you haven't used CSS grid yet, this is a really cool way to do it. We'll do grid columns 3. And then we want a gap in between each of these. So I'm going to say gap is 8. And then let's go close the div around here. And that is going to be how we get our projects into a grid. Yeah, isn't CSS grid so cool? So there we go, yeah. Now let's also make this responsive. This is the last part of our Tailwind for this homepage, because if I do, they kind of stay in this grid. So let's go over here. Let's say grid columns 3 is only on large screens. On medium screens, grid columns 2, and it defaults to grid columns 1, so we don't actually need to write grid columns 1. But there we go. And I think we should give a little bit of padding to our project, so padding maybe 3. Let's go take a look. There we go. That looks a lot better. Let's scroll over here and look how responsive that is. Very cool. Now, the images aren't showing because we haven't added any images to our Sanity Studio. But if you add images, they should show up here. All right, so we've written some Tailwind. We've made our site look pretty cool. And I think we're on a really good path to being able to click on these and showing each individual project page by themselves. Next up, let's go ahead and link each of these individual projects to their own specific page. Right now, we're on the home page, but if we wanted to click into one, it would make sense to be able to go to /project/ the project slug. So to do this, first of all, let's get some real projects in here. We're going to go back to our Sanity Studio, and let's go and delete this third test. I'm going to keep it, so delete right there. Or I'm going to delete it, so delete right there, delete now. And then let's go into test. Let's go ahead and, in this case, we're just going to add 2 YouTube videos. So I'm going to add a couple projects. This first one will be sanity.io crash course. We'll regenerate that slug. Image, I'm going to upload an image for the Sanity crash course, and I have one right here. There we go. And you'll remember in our schema, we added a hotspot is equal to true in our image. So if we click the little crop icon right here, we can crop using the drag handles right here. So if I drag that over there, drag it over here, we can also declare where we want the hotspot to be. So this basically says if we need to focus on a certain area of the image, we want it to be there. We want it to be there or whatever. And we get the previews down here. They're really nice, and you'll notice it updating over here on the left as well. And if we move it over, it'll update again. So this is a cool feature from Sanity to tell when we render these images to kind of focus on a certain area of the image. All right, I'll go ahead and close that one. And we'll keep everything there. That's good. I'm going to paste in our URL from YouTube. I'm going to go back, copy this one right here. Let's go back to the dashboard and feel free to add whatever projects you have of your own. And I'm going to update this to say Sanity crash course video and hit publish. Highly recommend watching this, by the way. Document was published. That updates. We'll go ahead and update this one for our other projects. I'm going to say GROQ in 2, which is a series that I did on YouTube that lets you learn how to use GROQ in 2-minute videos. We'll regenerate that. We'll upload a new image. There we go. And let's make sure the hotspot picks this section over here where it says GROQ in 2. And let's do that. We'll see update over there. Very cool. We'll copy our GROQ into URL right here. We'll come back to the studio and let's paste that in. So yeah, these are quick videos to learn GROQ. and I'll go ahead and publish, and that will update that document. So we now have 2 documents that are ready to go, and I'll go back to our website, refresh, and so invalid source prop, you'll see that on next image host name cdn.sanity is not configured under your images in next-sanity config, or next config. So this is just in settings in Next to say, hey, I want images from this URL to show. So let's copy cdn.sanity.io. Let's click into this nice link, and they give us the docs right away. So we'll go into our next config and just add that chunk of code. That was a really great experience with the Next.js docs and that error to give us the direct link to fix our problem. All right, back over here, let's go down to next config.js and paste this inside of the next config images. Hostname is cdn.sanity.io. We don't need path names, so we'll delete that since we're just worried about the main URL of the domain. Let's go back over here to our website. So this was to handle images in Next. Since we updated next config, let's see if we need to update our server. So npm run dev, restart that. And let's see if this fixed. So I'll go back over, hit refresh, and there we go. We have our app running again. So we have our images showing really nice. I'm seeing a little bit of spacing issue on those, and we'll fix that. But right now we have a great way to show our projects. Let's go ahead and style these out and link to each of these. So let's go back to VS Code. I'm going to go back to the page.tsx file. And let's do a little bit of cleanup on our styles. Our image, let's bump up the width to 750. We'll bump the height to 300. I kind of want to drop this padding down to 1, so let's change that to 1. And then let's up our border to 2. So let's just make those quick changes. And then down here, I want to add a little bit more spacing. Let's go from margin top of maybe 2. So that gets a little more spacing from the image. All right, so let's check that out. That looks better. Maybe a little bit getting cramped over there, but that's okay. Let's start linking these so that they can go to an individual page. So we'll go back over here, and instead of this div, I'm going to make this a link, and we'll change the closing link right here. We need to import this. So we'll go to the very top of the file, and we'll do import link from next link. Let's scroll down, and here we have an error. Probably wants an href. Yep. Href is missing, so let's do that. Href, and we'll do backticks, and we're going to say /project/project.slug. So now that each of these is going to link to their own page with their own slug, we'll show that from there. So now you can see that this is linkable right here. Linkable. If we hover, let's go ahead and give these a little bit more style so that they show that they're linkable. And this will be the last thing we do on styles. Let's go over here to the link, and we're going to say hover. Let's do scale at maybe 105. And we'll say on hover, border blue at 500. And then we'll also transition both of these so that it's a nice transition between these two states. All right, there we go. That looks great. So now if we click one, we get /project/sanity.io crash course, but we have a 404 page, could not be found. That's because we haven't created this page yet. So next up, we have to create this page. So what we are going to do is go into our VS Code, go into our folder structure under the app folder. And this is how we are going to create a dynamic route that is going to be used for that route. We're going to say new file, and we're going to create the folders in here as well. So project is going to be the folder, and that corresponds to the first part of the route. We're going to do that with project, and that's going to be the dynamic part of our route. So when we're passing the slug, that is what is going to be called in as the project. And then we are going to do page.tsx. So a folder and a route doesn't really exist until there's a page.tsx under it. So that's how Next.js knows to say, okay, I'll create a page for this route. So good to note. If there's no route, then it's kind of private and it doesn't get used or shown to the public. All right, so let's define this thing right here. We're going to export default function project, and then we will return a div. My project goes here. Now you might be wondering, okay, so in Next 12, we used to have to get static paths and get static props here. Since it's a dynamic route, well, we don't need to do that, which is really cool. We're going to pass in params, and we're going to get that directly from our route, and Next.js is going to pass that in. And then we are going to have the const slug is equal to params.project, and params is what Next.js is going to use to pass us. And the reason it's called project is because of the file name right here. So if you use this name differently, it would pass in different params. Now that we have the slug, let's go ahead and do const project is equal to await get project. And we're going to pass in the slug. Now this is similar to how we did it in the page.tsx, where we did get projects and we did it right inside the component. What's cool about this is now we can start using the project right here. And it seems like a lot simpler code than get static paths, get static props. It's all just right here in the same component. All right, so we have a couple of things to do. We have some errors. Let's fix those. I'll do async right here to fix this await one. Let's fix this params type problem. It says it's any. Let's just give it a type so it knows what we're looking at. Type props is equal to an object, and that object is going to have params. And inside of that, we're going to have project, which is a string. And then we'll say this is going to be props. All right. That's the easy ones to fix. Right now, we are ready to go, except for this get project. We need to declare this thing and define it, and it hasn't been made yet. But we do have a sanity utils file that we can throw all of this in. So let's go over here to sanity, sanity-utils, and right now we have export async function, get project. So let's do another one, export async function, get project, singular, and we're going to pass in the slug, which is a string. And then, just like get projects, we are going to return a GROQ query fetch from in here. And we can actually type out the return too. So let's say promise, and it's going to return a single project. And the error here is because we're not actually returning anything out of this. It says it's returning void or any must have a return value. So we're going to write that in now. But this is cool because we have get projects, which returns an array. We have get project, which returns a single project. So let's go ahead and copy this right here. All right, let's copy this whole thing and we'll work off this. So I'm going to copy that. Let me zoom out so we can see it a little bit better. So we'll copy all of that. And we're going to go down here and paste that in. And the main difference right here, it's going to be a minimal one, is that we need to say type is equal to project. And slug.current is equal to slug. But this will still return an array of projects. So we want to say take that first one. And that's what the 0 does. So find any projects where the slug equals to the slug I'm passing in and only give me that one back. And the way we pass in that slug, we go down here and we say slug, slug, or we can shorthand that to just slug. And I'll zoom in again. So just like that, we have get project, which will return a single project. And you might be wondering, hey, do I have to write this create client every single time? Yes, but we can actually simplify this and move this config out. So we'll show you how to do that right after we get this working. So let's go back to page.tsx. Here we need to import get project add import. And now let's do this right here. Let's just make sure we have project.name, and let's make sure this works. So let's go back to our browser. We'll hit refresh. And there we go, Sanity Crash Course. So we have all the data for that project on this page, and check out what we had to do. We just did the get project right inside of the function. How cool is that? So much less code than what Next.12 did. And we're rendering on the server, so we're sending less JavaScript to render this page on our browsers. Awesome. All right, so we're in a really good spot. I want to simplify Sanity utils a little bit more. So there's a create client right here. There's a create client right here. If we changed out our project ID or data set, then we would have to change it in multiple places, especially if we had multiple functions inside of this file. So I'm going to go into our Sanity folder. I'm going to create a new file, say config/client-config.ts. And that creates a new folder, a new file. And the reason I called it client config is because this is for reading data from our client, which is Next in this case. But this one down here is for creating the studio. So that's how I differentiate. So we're going to say const config is equal to an object. And then we're going to export default config. And let's go ahead and grab that config from here. Let's go to Sanity utils, and I'll copy all of this right here. And I'll paste that into client config. All right, now that's looking good. And now I can go back and do Sanity utils, and then we can clean this up. We can remove all of this and just do it right here. We're going to say create client config, and that we're going to get it from client/client config. So now we are importing it from a separate file, and we can write it out just like this, and it simplifies our code just a little bit. And now we're not repeating ourselves in multiple places. So I'll do the same thing here. I'll go down and paste it in right here. Just like this. All right, so that looks good there. And this one looks good as well. Much cleaner. We have a little bit more organization in our Sanity folder, and we are in a good spot. But what I am seeing is that if we go back to the site, it does need a little bit of styling, just like our homepage needed. So we have our projects on the homepage. We have a single project page. Next up, let's make sure we style out the page right here so that we can get this to look as good as our homepage does. And we are going to need a NavBar eventually so we can get back to the homepage from here. So let's kick things off. I'm going to do some Tailwind styling on this page, and we're going to bring in some more content. Let's go over to our projects page, page.tsx. And we'll work right in here. We have the project, so let's start showing more parts of the project. So let's go with a header right here. And then on this project name, this will be an H1. And on the right side, we're going to do a href, an a tag href. This is going to be project.url. And title is view project. And we're going to do target is equal to _blank, so that opens up a new tab. And when you do that, just for some security, no opener, no refer. And we'll say view project. Close that up, close that a tag. All right, there we go. That looks good. Let's go see if anything changed. It still looks not that great. So let's start working on that. We're going to go to our main div. Class name is equal to max width. Let's go for 3XL, MX auto so we can center it. And let's go for padding Y of 20. So top and bottom of 20. Our header here, let's go class name is equal to flex. So they sit side by side, and let's say justify between, so that they go to the left and to the right. So this H1 will go far left, this A tag will go far right, and we'll say item center so that they are vertically centered. All right, that looks good right there. Let's go ahead and style out sanity.io crash course. We are going to style it like we did the homepage. So if you still have your homepage up, go there and find that gradient that we did. Let's see, right here. We're going to copy this whole thing. And so yeah, copy that. Let's go back over and we'll paste that to our H1. So class name is equal to there. Okay, so let's also style our A tag right here. Class name is equal to background gray 100. Let's go for rounded at large. Then let's go text gray at 500. And then let's go for font bold. And padding Y3, padding X4, white space, no wrap. So that the button and text doesn't wrap into two separate lines when we do responsive work. Let's save that. Let's take a look. All right, that looks good. This is not large enough, so something happened there. Oh, we haven't even styled that one. So let's go ahead and add that text. 7XL, font extra bold, and let's keep it right there. And then I think this button also needs a little bit of a hover style. So we'll say hover BG pink 500, hover text pink 100. And then let's give it a transition so that it transitions between the not hovered and hovered states. Okay. That looks good. And maybe a little large on this text right here. So let's drop that down to maybe, let's do 5XL and give it a drop shadow. Perfect. All right, that looks good. Next up, let's keep going. We're going to add the content right here, and then we are going to add the image right here. So let's go down. Here after the header, we're going to add our content goes here. And then we're going to say image goes here. So now to do the content, we are going to add a div. And then here we're going to say project.content. And this is going to get interesting because this comes back as portable text. Remember, portable text, and it's not assignable to React Node, so we can't just display it like this. We have to display it in a special way. And this is because it is an array of blocks, which is like paragraphs that have bold or span tags or italics or block quotes, all kinds of fun formatting that isn't easy to do right here. And let's see what this looks like if it just gives us an error right away. And it says can't display this. So the way we can do this is a new package. Let's go into our terminal. Let's cancel that out, clear it out, and we are going to say npm install at portable text/react. And portable text is the tool we're going to use to show all of our blocks that we created in the Sanity Studio. Let's go ahead and npm run dev again. We'll close that. So how do we use it? We are going to go to the top of this file and we are going to say import portable text. And this is importing a component from at portable text/react. Cool. And now we can use this component to display the portable text down below. Let's go find that. And this is a lot better than looping over the project.content. This will just do all of that work for us. And we can say portable text value is equal to project.content, like that. And that will display our portable text on the site. So refresh, and there we go. So that's all of our text that we had. It's just text, so it might seem like a lot of work to display this text, but if we had more stuff in here like bolds or fun formatting, block quotes, code blocks, that would look really good. All thanks to portable text. So let's go style that. So on this div, we're going to say class name. Text is large. Let's go for text gray at 700. So it's not just pure black. MT4 for margin top. Let's go from margin top 5, actually. Yeah. All right, that looks good. And now let's add the image. So we're going to go down here and we're going to say image, and we're going to import the next image. Like that right here. And we're going to go to the very top and import image from next image. Yep, just double checking. So we'll go back down, and just like we did on the home page, source is equal to project.image. Alt is equal to, and again, you can go into your Sanity utils and bring in the image alt. I'm going to use project.name right now. Yeah. So we'll say width is going to be 1920, height is going to be 1080, and then let's give it some classes. Class name is equal to margin top 10. We'll go for border 2, border gray 700. So it gets a nice border around it. We'll do object cover and rounded, extra large, so for that rounded corner. All right, that'll be good for that. Let's go take a look. Check it out. We have our project page looking really good. We have our title, our content, our project right here with this image, and the link to go view the project, which actually goes to the YouTube. So very nice. And if we go back to the home page, I'll just delete all of that right here. Press enter. I can click GROQ and chew, and all of that is also dynamically pulled in. So very cool. Now, the next thing we need to get going to work on is to have a NavBar. We need to create a shared layout between the home page and the projects page. We don't want to have to create a header and a NavBar in both of the pages that we have right here. So if we go to our folder structure, we don't want to create a header in here and then a header in here as well. Well, lucky for us, we have this layout file that Next.js already gave us, which the layout file will wrap around everything inside of this folder that it sits in. So let's close everything out. And if I go into this layout file and I go down here, language and body, let's go class name is equal to BG pink 500, save that and come back to our entire, and our entire site is pink. So it's working. And then if we go to the main home page, that site should be pink as well. So anything in layout will span everything for all of our routes. So it's working. So have that in mind. All we have to do here is go here. The body of our content will live right here. And I will say main. And then we can have a header here. Let's go ahead and do link. This is going to be a Next.js link component. We'll say href is going to be the home page. And let's go for class name is equal to, we're going to do that whole BG gradient thing again. So I'm just going to go back to the home page and I'm going to copy this again. So we'll copy that. Let's go back to layout. And I'm going to put my name here as the logo, And then let's style it just a little bit more. I'm going to go for text large and font bold. Now we need to actually have a link right here. So we're going to do this and I'm going to import from next/link. And I'll show you that at the top, import next/link right here. And while we're here, we'll change this to my awesome site generated by Next plus Sanity. That's just metadata. And we'll scroll down. All right, so we have our header here, and that should apply to all of our routes. Something I also want to do here is go class name. Let's put a max width of 3XL, MX auto, and let's go for padding Y of 10 to the entire site because we did it to the home page and we did it to the single pages, but let's just do it right here on the main layout. Now that means I can go back to this page and delete this right here. And that's gone. And then I can also go to the projects, project page.tsx, scroll to the top, and delete this right here as well. All right. So let's go back to our site. Now we have our NavBar right here. We have our projects. We have our hero section right here. Let's actually give our spacing on the main. Let's actually add some spacing on the main as well. Let's go down here. We'll go back to layout, down to main. Let's say class name is equal to, let's go for padding Y of 20 there. Yeah. Now that should get some spacing away from the header. There it goes. So now that's our header. There's our hero. And I'll click on a project and we still have our logo. And we can go back to the home page from here. Yep. And I can click Sanity Crash Course, go back to the home page. So everything works. We have our layout working like it should, but there's going to be something really interesting that happens when we update layout. So right here, and let me close all these files. Now I want to show you something interesting that just happened. If we go back to our dashboard, to our studio, notice that our layout applied to the studio route as well. So our entire padding and our max width and our header are actually showing on the studio page, which is not a great experience anymore. So with that in mind, we have to create a separate layout for the site and a separate layout for the studio. Now, this is interesting because this is a brand new thing for Next 13 and maybe going to be hard to wrap our heads around, but if we have our layout file, this applies to everything in that folder. So, since we can use our folder structure to define our routing, we can actually, in Next 13, now use our folder structure to define organization. And what do I mean by using your folders as organization? So I can create a new folder here, and I'm going to call it site with parentheses around it. And I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this studio with parentheses around it. So these actually don't do anything for Next.js's routing. It helps more with organization. So if I had a layout file in here, that would apply to everything in this folder. And then if I had a layout file in here, that would apply to everything, all the routes in the site folder. So now we have two different parts of our site organized using these folders. And I know that might sound interesting, and let me just keep going and show you how it works. So put this layout, because it is a site layout, in this site folder, and we'll replace that one. Okay, so that works out well. Let's copy everything in the site layout. I'm going to copy all of this, and then let's go into the studio layout and paste that in. And I don't want any of this stuff in here. So we're going to delete all of that. Okay, and this main right here, all of our classes and all of our classes here, that's going to be this studio layout. And I believe I don't need the next link at the top anymore. Yeah, and that's it. We actually don't need the globals.css here as well because the studio comes with its own styles. All right, so we can start moving everything over into the correct locations. Let's get organizing. So let's go ahead and say the admin route is going to go into Studio. So Studio doesn't do anything for routing. Admin is where the first routing starts. So it's still at /admin. Our Studio is still at /admin. API routes can stay there, can stay right there too. Projects will go onto the site. Favicon can stay right there. Globals will stay right there. Page, it goes under site. So that's our home page right there. So even if it's under /site/pages.tsx, it's still just a home page. All right, let's close all of our editors. There's some stuff going around. Let's go and close all those. And here, let's see and make sure everything's still there. Projects, project page.tsx, layout.tsx, page.tsx for the home page, studio, admin, index, page. Cool. So admin has its own layout as well, and studio has its own layout. So let's actually delete this admin layout. We don't need that one, and there we go. So we have studio layout. Let's make sure our app still functions as we remember it. We moved around a lot, so we'll go back. Can't resolve globals.css. That's because we have to update our import. So we're going to site layout. All the way at the top here, we're going to do a ... Since we're going up one folder, let's go back over. And all right, the studio still works. Very nice. And let's go make sure our homepage works. And our site works just like it did before. And I can click into that, and that works. And I have my layout applying to the site only and not the studio side of things. And the studio is untouched. We can still use it as we did before. I am seeing a quick problem here, though. There's like this border on here. I think we actually do need the global CSS because it is a Tailwind reset, a CSS reset. So let's go back over under Studio Layout, and we are going to also import globals.css there. All right. So my mistake, we do need globals.css in this file and in our other site layout. So let's go over here. There we go. No weird padding around the edges. And our homepage looks good as well. And that's how we are going to use organizational folders inside of Next.js so that we can create multiple layouts for different routes, and the child routes underneath each of those routes is pretty powerful stuff. All right, we have a fully functioning site. So at this point, we can just end here and say we're good to go. We have a great website. We have projects for individual pages, which are coming from our Sanity Studio, and that is coming from a project schema type. We have learned all about Next.13 and how it's server-side rendered, how we can use our folders as our routing, and how we can even use our folders as organization. And we have a pretty good folder structure here. We've dropped in the Sanity Studio, but I think we can take this a little bit further. I want to do one more thing, and let's go ahead and talk about it. So we are going to add a pages schema type. So currently we have projects. We're going to add pages, and this is going to be so we can add pages like an about page or a contact page. So I'm going to close everything. Let's close this, and let's go into Sanity, schemas, and we're going to create a new page-schema. And this is cool because now we have all of our schemas in one folder. We have our barrel file here. So let's go ahead and create page-schema.ts. I'm going to say const pages is equal to, and very similar to how we did the project schema. We could go and copy and change some things, but repetition makes for great learning. So we're going to keep going here. So name is page, title is going to be plural for pages and capitalize, and type is going to be document. Remember, name, title, type. And now we get to our type fields. So our fields arrays, we're going to have a bunch of objects. So name, title, type again. Name is title. Title is going to be title, lots of titles. Type is going to be string. All right, let's keep going here. The next one is going to be name is slug. Title is slug. And like we did for the project schema, we're going to say type is slug. And like the project schema, we're going to add some options here. We're going to say options is an object. Source is going to be from the title, but unlike the project one where we did source over there, we're going to also add max length is 96. So you can define validation there. And then the last field we're going to add is content. Perfect. And so just like the project schema, this one is going to be a type array, and it's going to be of type is block, and this is going to be our block content. Now that's all it takes to define this object, which is our page schema. And let's just export it out of this file, export default page. Now we have to make sure that Sanity knows about this, so we're going to go into index.ts inside of our schemas folder and add it right in here. We have project, we have page now, and we'll do the same thing here. We're going to bring that in from page, just like that. All right, so we can make sure that this is coming in from our Sanity Studio now because it's in the schemas array. So we'll go over to our studio, refresh that. And now we have pages. Fantastic. So let's create a couple. Let's say an about page will generate a slug, and I'll just say I am the about page. Look at all the cool stuff here, and I'll put a bold on that. We can even put an underline somewhere in there. We can just show the formatting on the front page, and then we'll do first, second, third bullet points just to have that. Okay, so publish that, and let's go ahead and create another one. We'll do contact, and the slug will just generate. You can find me on Twitter at Kapehe_OK, and we can even take this right here and click on this link, and I'll type it in right here. And you can actually find me on Twitter at Kapehe_OK. All right, so that URL is on there. It is linked. Perfect. So now we have our link. We can click publish. Document was published, and now we have 2 pages that we can work with. So let's go back over to our code. And we are going to get our Sanity utils open. And what we are going to do is we're going to create 2 functions to get all pages and a function to get a single page. So just like we did for projects. Here we have get projects, get project. I'll do the same thing here. Export async function get pages, plural. Export async function get page, singular. And we're going to pass in the slug. And now just like the projects and project, we're going to do create a type. We're going to create a type. So let's go over here to our types folder. I'll create a page.ts, and you'll notice I'm moving a little bit faster than we did before. And that's because a lot of this stuff is what we did in the project schema type and bringing all that data in. So we're going to move a little bit faster. Export type page is equal to this object right here. We're going to have ID, which comes from Sanity, created at, which comes from Sanity as well, and that's a date. And then we have the fields that we created. So title, which is a string, slug, string, content, which is going to be portable text block. And it's going to be an array. And we're going to import that portable text block from Sanity. All right, so now we've defined our page type, and now we can use it in Sanity utils. And that's the only place we're really going to use it, since Sanity utils will pass it along to every other page that will use it. So we're going to say this returns a promise of pages, an array of those. And let's make sure we do our import right there, and this will return a promise for a single page. Perfect. All right, let's type in both of these. I'm going to click here and Alt-click here. We'll press enter, and then these are going to start the same way. Return create client, client config.fetch. And then we're going to pass in a GROQ query here, just like this with the backticks. And now let's create these separately. So this one, we are going to say asterisk to grab all the data. And we're going to open up our brackets to get type is equal to page, so get all the pages. Now we're going to filter down to what exactly we want. So we're going to grab the ID, created at title, slug. Remember, we're going to create that alias, so slug is now slug.current. We should also bring in content here, but we're getting a list of our pages, and I'm thinking we're going to put this in the navbar, so we aren't going to show the content in the navbar. So I'm going to remove that actually. And this is only the stuff that we're going to use so we can create a list of links to each page. All right, let's do the same thing for down here. Let's go for asterisks to grab everything. Underscore type is equal to page, and slug.current is equal to slug. And remember, What is going to bring back all the pages to match this? It's going to give it as an array, but we only want the first one. So we're going to do that right there, and then we're going to pretty much copy everything that's up here. Like that. We're going to bring it down, grab all the same stuff, but here, this is for an individual page, so we are going to go ahead and grab the content this time. And let's pass in the slug so that it knows to use the slug. And let's also give the slug a type of string. Just like that. Okay, now we have created both of our functions for getPages and getPage. And that's kind of how I like to do our setup. We will create the schema, we'll create some content, we'll create our utility functions to go get that content, and then we'll create our types to make sure it's all type safe. So looking good. First up, let's close all these editors and start from a good place. We're going to go into the app folder, site, layout, and I'm going to go grab all of our pages right here. Get all of our pages, and I'm going to say const pages is equal to await get pages. Just like that, and since we have an await, we have to async this right here. And getPages needs to be imported. I'll click this little light and sanity utils. So if I scroll up there, you can see it's imported from @sanity/sanity-utils. Now the next thing we need to do is show all of these pages as links. So here in the header, right next to the logo, I will say div. And then right here, let's map over all these pages. So we'll say pages.map page, and we're going to create a link and make sure we put a key in there because React wants that key. So page.id is going to be our key. We'll close that link. Cool. And then page.title. And we're going to add the href here for /slug. And that'll be page.slug. And I'm going to do that right inside of /. So that's not going to be a /projects or / anything else. It's going to be right in the home page / the slug. And that's because these are pages. So we don't want it to be /about, or we do want it to be /about or /contact. So let's take a look at where this looks on our site. It looks good. We have contact and about and each of these links, and you see at the bottom left /about and /contact. So let's style them out a bit so they sit next to our logo instead of underneath. So go to the header and you're going to say class name is going to be flex, items center. And we're going to go for justify between so that we can push the content of this header to the left and to the right. And then over here, we need to have these sit next to each other. So let's say class name is equal to flex, item center, and let's give it a gap of maybe 3. So there's some spacing between those. All right, that looks good. These are a little bit too dark. Let's go ahead and shrink these down too. So text small and text gray, maybe 600. And let's bring up the gap to about 5. Cool. So let's go take a look. All right, that looks a lot better. Our logo's over there. Our 2 links are over there. Let's make sure we have an indicator that they're hoverable. So we're going to say class name. This is hover underline. Let's take a look. There we go. Now, it's not the prettiest hover action, but it does indicate that those are links. Just like we did for the projects, we want to link over each individual one. So let's click on an individual, and this will 404 because we haven't created this page just yet. So to do that, we are going to go back over to our folder structure inside of site. We are going to have a new file. We're going to say slug is the dynamic route. And in Next 13, we have a page.tsx underneath it to make it a real route. All right, so let's export default async function page, and that's going to get params from next. Cool. And then we are going to take params.slug, and we are going to get a single project. So we're going to say const project is equal to await get project params.slug. We have to fix a couple things here. Let's fix this params error right here. It probably wants to type, so we'll say type props is equal to params, which is an object that has slug, which is a string. Let's give that to this function right here. That one's good. Next up, we need to import get project. We'll click on the light bulb and click that to import from Sanity utils. And next up, we have to return. Oh, actually, I'm seeing we're getting a project and we need to get a page. So I'm actually going to select both of these and type in get page. That was a good catch. So let's return now a div. Let's say page.title, and I see I did it again. This also needs to be page right here. So sorry about that. All right, looks good. Let's just go ahead, get all of our styling in right here. Let's go in there. Let's give an H1 wrap around this. Then we'll do class name. And we're pretty much going to copy everything from the project. So let's go ahead and go back to projects, page.tsx. We're going to copy everything in this H1 right here. So get that, copy that. We'll take that, go back over to the slug, page.tsx, and just paste that right in there. After our H1, we're going to show the content of this page, and we're going to just drop that in using the portable text component. So portable text value is equal to page.content, just like we did for project. And let's wrap this in a div and give it some styles. So we'll do class name. We'll do text large, text gray at 700 and margin top 10. And we need to import portable text. We'll click on the little light bulb and import from portable text / React. And that should be good enough to show our page content. So let's see. Let's go back. We'll refresh. And there we go. Check that out. And it even gives the list items, but Tailwind by default removes the bullet point things. So we would have to bring in something like Tailwind Pros classes to get this to look good. But we do have our underline. Let's click on contact. And you see this is a link that still needs styling. You could definitely bring in Tailwind's topography plugin to get some styles in. But overall, we have a great site. We have our logo that goes back to the home page. We have our projects. We have our nav that links to dynamic pages. And I'll click about here. And it has dynamic content. And if I went back to my studio and added a new page, it would also show up right here. And the content would be updated as well. So really cool stuff. And now that we've shown a list of them, in addition to a single one of these schema types, I think it's some good practice for how you can work with Sanity Studio and Next.js applications. So we have our application on localhost 3000 running nicely, and all of our Sanity content is coming from Sanity's content lake. The next step here is to get this thing deployed and have a live website. So I'm going to go to my GitHub. I already made a GitHub repo for this, so you're going to need to make a GitHub repo from the code that you have locally. If you go into VS Code and you go into your Git panel, over on the left here, you should see the little GitHub icon. You can commit everything and you should be able to see a publish repository button. And that way you can click that and you can create a brand new repo in GitHub all from inside of VS Code. It's pretty slick. So that's what I did. And over here is my GitHub repo. Now we are going to take this repo and let's deploy it to Vercel. It just makes sense to deploy Next.js to Vercel. So let's go to the dashboard for my Vercel and I'll click add new and we'll get a new project. And we have our repos right here. It already shows the one that I just created 4 minutes ago. I'm going to go ahead and click import. Project name is next-sanity, framework, preset, Next.js, and these defaults are pretty good. We don't have to change out environment variables because all of our authorization happens on the sanity side of things. So nothing needs to happen inside of this repo. We'll click deploy, and how easy was that? I jumped past the deploy loading screen, if you noticed. All right, so we have our site deployed to this nice little preview, and it pulled in the content in the preview. Let's go ahead, go back to our dashboard. We'll click on this new project that we just created, and we can click visit right here to see this live in a website. So there we go. Just like it looked on local, really nice, live, and accessible to anyone that we send the link to. So the next step is, let's see what the admin dashboard looks like. So I want to show you something really cool. Let's say that the studio is right here at /admin. And to access our content, remember earlier, we need to add the following URL as a course origin to our Sanity project. And that makes sense because Sanity Security says that you have to define what domains are going to be able to access your content. So I'll get this and we'll click continue. And right away, it opens up my Sanity dashboard. I have to sign in. I'm going to sign in with Google. And just like that, it's already auto-filled. So with the course origin, and I click add course origin, and it kicks me right back to the studio, and I can log in with Google now. And I have access to my live studio from the URL that Vercel gave me at /admin. So I want to show you something super cool. Here I have the studio up on this tab. Let's bring the live studio over to the right. And I'm using split view right here. So the left is the local studio, and you can see localhost 3000. The right is the deployed version. And what's cool is if I click into pages, it looks like I am in contact over here. You can see that I'm editing this document over on my local studio, and I can click here. And now the local studio can see that I'm editing on the production side, on the deployed side, and this is API, Presence API at work. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this on the live site, and we'll say, can't wait to chat. And immediately you saw it happen on the left side, and look how powerful that is. Even if you're working in local versus the deployed site, you still get that real-time update because all of this is backed up by Sanity's content lake. So you can go ahead and click publish here. Let's go back and view the site. So this is going to be the site localhost. Let's go to the contact page. Can't wait to chat shows up here. And I'll go back to my Vercel dashboard, click visit right here, go to contact, and on the deployed side, there it is. Can't wait to chat, also updated. So really great way to see the flow of content from our studio. Even if you're working locally or on the deployed side, it shows up directly on the website. And remember, Next.js uses React Server components and takes care of pre-rendering and caching for you so that it's fast. All right, that's a great look at everything we could build today. And we went from having no Next.js website to creating our own Next site, adding in the Sanity Studio. So we have a /admin route to work in, and we have our content that we can update that updates on our website as we create it. I'll be sure to leave the GitHub repo in the description below. But if you want to learn more about Sanity, definitely check out this sanity.io crash course. You can find it on the sanity.io YouTube channel. And that's a great way to learn more about Sanity and get a full crash course into it. You can find me at Kapehe_OK over on Twitter. I always love to see what you're building. Please let me know if you found this tutorial helpful. I love hearing from all of you. I had a lot of fun building this, and I hope you did too. Thank you to freeCodeCamp for letting me be on this channel, and make sure to smash that like button. So we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, everyone, and aloha. Again, thank you so much for hanging out. I'm excited to see all of your projects up and running with Next.js and Sanity.io. If you want to take it one step further, you can join the Next.js Discord community. You can find more information there and the link to join at nextjs.org/blog/discord. So definitely check that out. Also, the Next.js docs are awesome. So head on over to nextjs.org/docs to learn more about Next. The Sanity crash course that I was talking about as one of my projects can be found at Sanity's YouTube channel, sanity.io crash course. And then the Sanity community has awesome people that can be found at slack.sanity.io. And the handy dandy sanity.io docs can be found at sanity.io docs if you want to learn more about Sanity. But definitely check out all those links. And you can find me on Twitter at Kapehe_OK. If you want to tag me in any of your finished projects, I'd love to check them out. Mahalo everyone for joining, and I will see you around.